We come to see the Wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Here he is, the Wizard of Oz.
In 1900, a formerly struggling author named L. Frank Baum published The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Baum had been born in upstate New York in the 1850s and had wanted to be a theater producer and playwright. The mid-1850s, the tail end of America's first industrial revolution, saw big changes for the entire country. Baum's father was one of those American entrepreneurs who had gotten involved in some of the biggest industries powering America's development, including oil drilling in Pennsylvania. With his newfound wealth, he bought his son a small cheap printing press, which sparked his love of writing. Taking a job in his brother's store, Baum approached a local theater company who scammed him into buying all their costumes in exchange for promises of future lead roles. A classic scam. His theater career, which happened while he continued working at the dry goods store, was modestly successful. He wrote several plays and acted in them. Until in 1882, the theater burned down while a production of Baum's play Matches, ironically, took place, leading to all the costumes and scripts he had written being destroyed. Baum and his wife, Maud Gage, the daughter of a famous suffragette and activist, moved from New York, where he hadn't had much success, out west to South Dakota. Baum would take his time in South Dakota, which was full of drought and took place during the same time as the Wounded Knee Massacre and the War against the Sioux, as part of his writing for The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, replacing drought-ridden South Dakota with Kansas. Baum's store and South Dakota newspaper failed in 1891, and he moved with his family to Chicago, where he started reporting for the Evening Post. That's when he got interested in telling children's fairy tales, starting first with Mother Goose in prose, and then The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. All of Baum's work for children would be meant to teach and invoke the Brothers Grimm and Mother Goose children's stories. The Wizard of Oz was instantly successful, and within 2 years, Baum's dream of the theater returned as he helped write and produce The Wizard of Oz, Fred R. Hamlin's musical extravaganza. The stage musical was so wildly successful that it toured around the country for 11 years. Baum launched a franchise with 14 Oz books, the last being published in 1920, a year after his death. All in all, Baum had written 14 Oz books, 41 novels, 83 short stories, 200 poems, and 42 scripts. He was a prolific believer in financing stage plays and musicals, and his final project in 1914 was the Oz Film Manufacturing Company. He dreamed of probing the thus far untapped children's film market, wanting to make a film of The Wizard of Oz. However, it wasn't to be, and his one film adaptation in 1914 was of his previously anonymous novel, The Last Egyptian. He passed away of a stroke in 1919 without making his Wizard of Oz film. In 1925, L. Frank Baum Jr. and Larry Semin attempted to adapt the story into a silent adventure movie. It was poorly received by audiences and critics, and the idea of children's filmmaking had not taken off. The film did so badly that Larry Semin went bankrupt and died at the age of 39 just 3 years later, with his family blaming the stress of his bankruptcy for his death. The 2 decades after Baum's death saw film technology and the studio system grow by leaps and bounds.
Unlike the two-color system, which recorded the film on one strip of black and white negative, this new camera ran 3 black and white negatives simultaneously, and that is why it is known as 3-strip Technicolor. The magazine on top of the camera, which is that part that looks like the Mickey Mouse ears, was triple the width of a normal black and white camera because it contained each roll of negative to capture your red, green, and blue records.
Contrary to popular belief, The Wizard of Oz is not the first color film ever made. There are 3 dozen or so other films, starting with the lost film The World, the Flesh, and the Devil in 1914, that use different processes, from Cinemacolor to color inserts to Prisma to do the coloration. Many of these films, the majority in fact, have since either been lost completely or only exist in black and white. In 1937, the small, now forgotten, animation studio Walt Disney Productions, which had become very successful for their animated shorts, which would play before feature-length movies, released their first feature-length cel-animated movie with color, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Hi-ho, 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 it's home from work we go.
The movie, whose premiere audience included Judy Garland, was instantaneously a cultural sensation. Other studios instantly became interested in buying the rights to and producing children's films, and in 1938, MGM bought the rights to The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. This led to a famously chaotic writing process, where William Cannon wrote an outline. Herman Mankiewicz, Noel Langley, and Ogden Nash were hired separately to write versions of the story without being informed. Langley's script was then given to Harold Arlen and Yip Harburg to write music. Florence Ryerson and Edgar Allan Wolfe were asked to touch it up and then fired, and then director Victor Fleming and John Lee Mahan touched it up further. Other additional writers included Irvin Brechter, the Marx Brothers writer, Herbert Fields, George Cukor, and King Vidor. A three-way race between Shirley Temple, Judy Garland, and Diana Durbin commenced for the role of Dorothy. Buddy Epson and Ray Bolger, who had been inspired by the musical to go into vaudeville, were cast as the Scarecrow and the Tin Man. However, Epson inhaled aluminum dust on set and had to leave, being recast as Jack Haley while he was in the hospital in critical condition. Multiple directors, including Richard Thorpe, George Cukor, and then the main director, Victor Fleming, were cycled through. Cukor left to direct Gone with the Wind, and before the filming was over, Victor Fleming would replace him on that. King Vidor came in to finish the Oz shoot.
It's me! She's locked me in!
Listen, fellas, it's up. We gotta get her out. Open the door.
Oh, hurry, please, hurry!
Judy Garland was hired finally to play Dorothy at age 17, and the shoot was problematic for her, to say the least. She was given Benzedrine tablets and other medications, uppers and downers, which would end up becoming a lifelong issue and eventually killing her. She was abused both physically on set and sexually during the shoot. For every one of the main cast, from Burt Lear as the Lion, Ray Bolger, Jack Haley, and Margaret Hamilton as the Wicked Witch, The Wizard of Oz would end up leading to a lifelong fame and recognition as these characters. Asbestos makes an appearance in the scene with the poppies and the witch's burning broomstick.
Margaret Hamlin, who was the Wicked Witch, was the sweetest of the whole bunch, you know. She was just a great person. And she would visit with us and talk to us.
Whenever she was not in makeup, she mingled with the Munchkins and made it a specific point to distribute a personally autographed picture to each individual Munchkin on the set.
The Munchkins were hard to cast. A nationwide talent search netted 100 little people who would get paid $125 a week. Margaret Hamilton, who had been cast as the Wicked Witch at the last minute, was an unfortunately underappreciated talent as a character actress, and relished being on set for The Wizard of Oz. She mingled with the Munchkins until an accident on set on the elevator left her with second-degree burns for 6 weeks after the effect where she disappeared into fire went awry, and she actually caught fire and fell through a trap door.
They had been shooting this scene and apparently had an almost perfect take of this whole sequence. And then they said, well, I heard Victor Fleming say, well, let's take one more try at it.
Well, I seen her come up and down a few times, and I was amazed. Isn't that terrific? I didn't even know about trapdoors then. I was so naive, you know. And then one time she didn't come up. I says, oh, what happened to her?
Her green makeup was toxic copper and needed to be taken off with acetone. This acted as combustion for the fire. Asbestos and copper and aluminum. Oh my! All of this just to say, it was one of the craziest and most infamous film shoots of all time. Judy Garland was able to renegotiate her contract with MGM and became one of the 10 highest paid stars at the time. At the time, MGM's $2 million box office net meant that The Wizard of Oz was technically a box office failure. The budget was $2.8 million, and in the US earned just over $2 million, $3 million worldwide. But re-releases in 1949, 1955, 1989, and 2019 have more than made up for that. The Wizard of Oz has continually been lauded by critics and fans alike as one of the greatest films in American history. Victor Fleming and MGM would go on 6 months after The Wizard of Oz's release to absolutely crush the box office with another one of American cinema's greatest achievements, Gone with the Wind.
Tap your heels together 3 times. And think to yourself, there's no place like